a master's degree in health science.
Wow.
Okay. And Bobby, can you introduce yourself as well and give us some background on, well, you just been working with the youth for a long time, so, but
Yeah.
give us some background on what you do.
Sure, no problem. I'm a licensed social worker in the state of Maryland. I've been working with youth and families for years now, but if I have to date it, I guess you could say a little over 8 years.
Okay.
I currently provide therapy at Parker Psychiatric Services for youth and families, children, youth, and families. I'm a founder of Son of a Dream, which provides services and multimedia resources to empower youth and families as well as professionals working with that population. I'm co-founder of Reflection of Kings, which is a youth media program for Black boys, teaching them how to use media to tell their own stories. And I'm, committed member of National Association of Black Social Workers, proud husband and father.
Definitely. Thank you. And since we're on the education piece, just to let everybody know, Coco, can you let us know in your, especially in dealing with this conversation as far as Black fathers, meaning Black family in general, can you give us your background a little bit so we can understand you got some letters behind your name too?
I am a licensed social worker in the state of Maryland. Master's in Management and Leadership Development. I've worked with, I chose to work mostly with young people. I started off, I was a certified addiction counselor, and that wasn't the field for me. I had a lot of education and no experience. I started off with adults. It was horrible. I was very, very young, and they weren't trying to hear me. So I turned my direction to the young people. At the time, addiction wasn't a thing with the young people. Now, so it would be, but I'm not practicing social worker any longer, but I continue to work with young people. I choose now to work with young boys because I wanted to fill a need for young boys. So that's where my focus is now in terms of social work, although my work is not currently with social work. I'm in civil rights right now.
Okay, thank you. So first and foremost, I have to acknowledge to the guests that when I was prepping for the show and I talked to both of you individually, both of you were, the conversations were going the same way, and I wasn't thinking that way with this topic. Both of you were going towards services and the difference in services between young mothers or soon-to-be mothers and young fathers and the big gap in that. And I wasn't leaning that way. I was leaning more of the way of individuals, and I was thinking more of them knowing a minimum, but not actually looking at, if you're no matter what age you are as a mother, the day you say you're pregnant, you can get services, you get direction, you get
classes.
Right, you get a little bit of everything. And that's right. Something that I honestly wasn't looking at. Dina, can you speak to that a little bit more? And Bobby, you can chime in.
Yes. So that is during the time period of leading up to becoming a father, there's all kinds of research that suggests that that transition period is a developmental crisis for men. It's the time when men are susceptible to all kinds of mental health issues, anxiety, stress, and then just the lack of confidence in knowing what it's going to take, or especially if it's their first child. Fathers also deal with a lot of stress if they have had other children and the prior pregnancy with their partner was complicated or stressful. They can experience some issues with, being nervous about experiencing that again. And so in general, fathers aren't directed, don't have services directed directly to them to help them ease them through the transition period. There's kind of an assumption that the focus needs to be on mothers, and there are all kinds of education programs where the specialty is maternal and child wellness.
Right.
And so even in the education component, higher education, there is a lack of focus on fathers and their importance and what their needs are during the transition period.
And if I can chime in real quick, that's part of why I wanted to refocus and onto young boys, because even coming into it, as Dina talked about, having a father component and teaching young men how to be fathers, there's not anything for young boys in emotional development. And so if they had something when they were younger in emotional development in some other areas, then they would be better fathers when it came to that point. And so having a father component in that, they'll still just be getting that support. It's something that should have happened long before that time.
Because when the girl or woman, the female does say she's pregnant, systematically, they only say the only obligation the man seems to have is financial. That's even systematically throughout the whole thing. That's the only expectation even the system expects of that person. They expect that person not even to be visible.
Right. And many of the young men adjust to that.
Right.
They adjust to.
That's all you need.
I gotta keep handing it over. Or I'm gonna avoid being a father because I'm broke and I don't have, and that's all they expect from me.
Right.
But
and even as it pertains to like doctor's visits, even the fathers who do attend those visits, oftentimes fathers report that there is no conversation directed at them. So mothers are screened for mental health and what their needs are. In many cases, the doctors won't even directly ask fathers a question of how they're doing or if they need anything. They feel forgotten and kind of like a spare part in the process of pregnancy.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bobby, tell me some of the ways that we can start to correct some of the ideas that you have that we can start to correct the I'm not even gonna say miseducation. I'll say the undereducation of young fathers and fathers to be.
That's a lot. That's a loaded.
All in a couple minutes. Just do it all right.
That's definitely a loaded question.
Some key things that you think would first off, some key things that you think the system needs to do, but also some key things that you think young fathers or fathers to be can do and start to reach out and think about some things and put some things in place to make their fatherhood journey a lot easier, a lot better.
Oh yeah, I think and Dina seems to be definitely on that path. But our institutions, where we're talking about medical institutions, we're talking about social service, human service institutions, need to center the voices of fathers in general. I believe it's a culture shift as well as paradigm shift within our society where we start to include fathers in family again. We've gotten away from that in terms of our practice, how we deliver services to the general public, that fathers are included in the family system. So, it's about us changing the way we do things as practitioners, as, institutions or organizations, and re-engaging fathers, establishing those programs, having more trainings for our practitioners on engaging fathers and making them more aware and bringing them into the fold. So, as Dina alluded to, just as simple as interactions during medical visits can definitely go a long way. I know for both of my daughters, my oldest and my youngest, I was present at those prenatal visits.
Right.
So, as they got care, I'll be present to be there to check on the health and the well-being of the baby as well. So I think it's important for doctors, nurses, to be more inclusive in conversations and engaging fathers and having programs for fathers as well. I mean, we're making some strides culturally and changing the national conversation around fatherhood. But still, there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. It's an old program. It's been around for many, 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 many years. But I wanted to know if it does it incorporate men at this time? WIC is old, but it's women, infants, and children.
Mm-hmm.
Do men have any? Right. Is there anything for men in there at all? Have they put anything in place for men in that program?
Child support.
That's it. Okay.
And I'm just saying in terms of how social service agencies engage fathers.
Right.
That's pretty much been the gist of it. I mean, I just resigned from Baltimore City Department of Social Services as the child welfare social worker. There are, I don't know, minimum engagement and involvement centering the voices of fathers. There are more practices in terms of the reunification process. There is more emphasis on engaging fathers, making sure that child welfare workers reach out to fathers and inform them on the process on reunifying with the child after the child has been removed from the home. From my experience working with DSS, I had fathers that was definitely actively involved in reunifying with their child, taking the necessary steps of parenting classes, attending therapy or addiction counseling. But I would say there's just not enough programming. What comes to mind to me in Baltimore City, Center for Urban Families, they have a fatherhood program. Matter of fact, it was pretty much built, Joe Jones built that Center for Urban Families around the foundation of a fatherhood program. You also have the Men and Family Center that's located on East Baltimore, that's led by Leon Purnell. You have Matt Pressberry, who leads Black Fathers Foundation, who adds various supports and levels of engagement for fathers. A lot of action on the grassroots level. You have a brother by the name of Shelley in the Emerson Village area.
So stay low.
Yeah, good brother. So a lot of efforts on a grassroots level with having activities to engage fathers and promoting fatherhood in general. However, systemically, we're just not moving the needle enough.
Right.
And my observation, even with all those programs that you mentioned, because they all exist, some level of services exist. They still spend a lot of time just teaching them what it means to be men or how to be men. And they spend a lot of time in trying to fix the traumas that they've experienced before they get to,
or the lessons that they missed
before they get to the point of even being a father, what it means to be a father, or how to stay in there, because it takes a lot of commitment, and commitment is difficult for them for whatever reason. And so some of what they have, you can't teach someone. Some of what you need, rather, you can't teach someone. You can't teach someone that you have to help to develop a whole person. And you can't, because that person got on your nerves today, you can't just leave them because you didn't pay $100 last month. You don't just not come because that $100 didn't get paid, or something like that. And I think Derek and I had a conversation a long time ago, and we were having a conversation, I don't know if you remember, about the mother not letting the father see the child.
Yeah.
And I said many times when the father left, he left the mother and his child was an afterthought.
Right.
He made no plans for his child before he made the decision to leave. His only decision was that I'm leaving this woman. His child never was even in the equation.
Right.
And so he didn't think about that until after he's gone. And he's like, oh, let me call her to see if I can see my child. And then it goes from there. And a lot of times he dipped back in there he feel like he need to get cozy up to her, just so he can see the child. And then it starts a cycle. He's back in there, he's going back and forth. She lets him come in, they have more relations, and it's never about the child.
Right.
Right. And it's also about the fact that you're throwing a man to be on their side of the point. You're throwing a man in a situation that he has no control over.
Right.
When I become pregnant, I have control of that whole situation. My decision is whether I'm going to keep this child or not keep this child. I have time to process that all together. You have to live with my decision as the father.
And we got to live with the system's decision.
And you got to live with this decision
of how.
Right. And you laid down with me and we got pregnant. I understand the responsibility on each other's end. I get that. We're adults.
Right.
But still, it's a decision that I have time to process whether I want to go through it or not. You have no choice as a man.
I disagree. We do have a choice, but we're not taught that choice. The choice is not to lay down with so many women.
I'm talking about after the fact.
But after we give it to you, it's yours.
Okay.
We can't.
That support early on that I was talking about.
Right. That's that early man training of understanding your responsibility of your seed.
Right.
And a lot of men don't get that. A lot of young boys don't get that.
We're in something called nature versus nurture. They don't get the nurturing.
Right.
Whose TV is on?
Somebody TV on?
No, that's my husband talking.
Frenchie.
Can he put a little bit of treble in his voice? God damn, Frenchie. But a lot of us aren't taught that, and that's what I'm learning more about as far as opening my mind up to really understand that he might be 25 years old with 3 kids, and he really might not know.
Right.
And I'm processing that. Bobby, you want to say something?
No, I just agree with the statement. I want to be. I think it's important for us to be mindful, and also mindful of the fact that we're talking about the development of people and human beings.
Right.
That's very complex.
Yes.
I can't paint men with a broad brush and say, well, this is the reason, this is going to be the behavior, because bottom line, when we're talking about dating and seeing people and being in that circle, in that arena, especially when you're growing up, no one's having a conversation about, okay, let's have our vision for what our family's going to look like.
Exactly.
I agree.
Right. That's what I was talking about early on
point,
as boys.
No, but to that point though, not even with girls, no one is. With the maturity level of 15, 16, I became a father at age 17. There wasn't a conversation about, okay, here's what we want our family to look like. And to your point, Derek, I wasn't sleeping around with different girls either. So we're saying that a 17-year-old making irresponsible decisions, and it's not that I didn't know better. It's not that no one had a conversation with me about sex either. We're talking about when we how we raise our families and men learning how to be the fathers. We have to be very clear with the fact that it's not exactly us having a conversation, coming together and say, this is our vision for what family is. So being mindful of that, there wasn't no conversation. So a father, of course, you're going to stumble early on. And fatherhood, in parenthood, you're going to stumble. Women make mistakes.
All day.
And poor decisions. Because you're learning as you go as a parent. And the conversation that I had with Derek early on in terms of having some type of mentoring program for young fathers, where older fathers such as ourselves are able to engage those young brothers as well. So that's being in contact as they provide services for women, again providing services for men on what this looks like, in terms of what fatherhood looks like and what support looks like early on, because the agreement was, let's have sex and then go about the business. There's no agreement about parenting on either side. Mom didn't say, this is what I want from you and this is what I want the next day. And dad didn't say it either. The agreement was, let's come together and have a quote unquote good time.
Right.
So of course a dad doesn't know, but when that time comes, it's about of course both parties being responsible for their actions. But if that wasn't modeled for you,
Right. It's hard to do.
and there was no conversations around
No
even
book.
if it's responsible sex, having responsible sex. It was none of these conversations, or how to treat and engage women, and not using women as recreation, and not using sex, period, man or women, as recreation. If these conversations aren't being had, then you're going to function the best way you know how or what you have.
Right.
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 Okay. I agree with you. If you don't know, we learn from somewhere. We get a perception of what, even if it's something small, but whatever that is, we have a perception of how adults or how men carry it in that arena. And that perception comes true because we begin to practice it. Whether it was true or not when we, you know what I'm saying, thought of it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get that.
Because I mean, I get exactly what Bobby's saying. You don't have those conversations.
No,
At 16, when I was pregnant with my first child, I wasn't thinking about that. It just wasn't going to happen to me. That was my mindset.
You was at the same party with Bobby. Y'all was just trying to have fun.
Bobby is not my baby daddy.
It was a wild party, though. Apparently, it was a wild party.
A wild party.
I wasn't at that party.
It was a boyfriend girlfriend. Wasn't no one's being promiscuous like that. You know, we'd be fast, but we were a boyfriend girlfriend. You weren't thinking this was going to happen to us, but it did. Right. You know, so we would do the same thing, but I got caught.
You know, one thing I was thinking about the other day, I had a conversation with someone and talking about the relations between men and women and kind of what we were raised on. And I don't know how old you are, Bobby, and I don't know how old you are, Dina, but we had examples. We had is Benny Hill. Oh, women were recreation. Yeah. This is our examples.
We stayed up late night to see Benny Hill.
They stayed up late night to see that. And Rodney Dangerfield, stuff like that. And the things that they did to women and how they spoke about women and how they treated women and things like that. And so things like that, those examples we have was women were recreation for men.
Right.
Right. There was no big conversation in reference to women enjoying sex. We knew we were vessels to be used for sex, but you didn't put out there women enjoying sex. Men always had a good time with it.
Right.
But like women, we had the letter A, and we were ostracized because of being enjoying sex. We
talk a lot about self-care now. Self-care should have been taught for boys and girls when we were young. We shouldn't have been taught how to treat a man. We need to be taught how to treat ourselves first.
Yeah.
That comes later in families and things like that, the whole development process. But that's not how it went at the time.
Right.
I think there's still components of the education process that's important, because even families who maybe went through and planned and determined and decided that they were going to have a child, it still doesn't necessarily make that transition into fatherhood easier, just because every transition is different. So some people are not prepared for the changes and I know we're talking about intimate relations, and that's one of the major things that changes after a couple or a family has a child. And so learning how to deal with or know the changes that are going to happen in a relationship, because relationship satisfaction is one of the greatest contributors to father involvement. And that could be where some fathers may try to avoid the whole family because the relationship was so bad, or in some cases, mothers act as gatekeepers to the children to say, well, if you don't want me, then I get to decide when you're going to be around the father. So there are additional factors that even if somebody had took the time and planned and waited until they were out of college and had their degree and were married and had a family, doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be a smooth transition into being parents. or that if the relationship long term doesn't last, that transition is not also going to be difficult for the mothers and the fathers. And I think that's important to kind of, I know the conversation is kind of framed around younger parents who may not have had the conversation, but that transition to fatherhood is difficult for fathers in all kinds of situations. And so it's something that kind of needs that focus and that attention to give the resources and the services that may be needed. And I just wanted to also give a shout out to Black fathers, because the CDC had put out a report that said, Black fathers are more likely than other demographics in the country to be actively involved in their children's lives, whether or not they live with them. So they're more likely to bathe them and eat with them and get them ready for bed than other populations. And there's this thing of the single motherhood, and a lot of that, so a lot of it is true, but they consider marriage, right? And so I can't even say that word. Parents who live together, cohabitate, those mothers might still be considered single mothers because they aren't married. However, some of that lack of marriage is made up for the fact that a lot of families who aren't married are still living together and kind of raising children together. Right. And so focusing on that dynamic and how to make that interaction more cohesive is important. I don't know if it's too early to throw out some benefits.
Go ahead.
With the fathers.
Early.
When we were talking recently about the systemic, how systemically there are not a lot of resources to fathers. So as a whole, society and our culture tends to think that fathers come into play later down the line. So early on, it's mothers, the nurturing, the feeding, and then fathers become important when the child, starts walking and is ready to play catch. But all the, research is pointing to the fact that children whose fathers are actively involved in their lives, they have better vocabulary, so they speak more words. Fathers tend to communicate in words that they know, whereas mothers try to meet the child on their level. So a child who has a father speaking to them would have, is more likely to have a larger vocabulary. They are better able to express themselves. In a lot of cases, children who have fathers involved, especially with boys, so they tend to have less behavior problems going into the adolescent years. And then there's been this connection between active fathers and girls being less likely to engage in early sexual activity. And so the children who have fathers, their behavior is different. So there's two types of behaviors with children. There's like internalizing behaviors, which is, are you reserved? Are you scared to speak up? And then there's externalizing behaviors, like when you mad, do you break things? And children who have active fathers, they have better behavior outcomes on those levels. So they're better able to manage their emotions. Academically, they're better. So I think if we could kind of promote the importance of fathers, especially in those early years, then we can perhaps get more of the culture on board with keeping fathers, encouraging fathers to be there from day one or day of conception.
That would solve a slew of just household issues and community issues within the Black community if we started to focus on training young men at an early age. It would just, the missing father is the key. I don't think a lot of folks like to just say it that way, but whatever the reasons are, the man is not there. He's affecting however many children he's leaving behind and not taking care of properly. Even if he's in the house, because everybody in the house ain't taking care of their child properly either.
The one thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, go ahead, Coco.
No, I was good. I'm sorry. I was thinking out loud. But the one thing I'm glad Bobby had mentioned earlier, that now currently there's clearly a paradigm shift. And Dina brought it up to talk about how I think you said CNN did a study. CBC did a study in how Black men are more likely to be there. And see, that was not our reality, but there's been a paradigm shift in that now they're more likely to do that. And so I think there's the change that we needed right there. And now if we implement the support services that they need early on, oh, I'm about to be a father, time to have some parenting classes, time to talk about the prenatal that she needs, to doctor's visits with her, when the baby comes, seeing the baby being born, cutting the umbilical cord, being a part of the whole process and the development, then I think we'll have better outcomes as well.
Real quick to piggyback on what you're saying, Coco. When I started to research this, I found out that there are studies that have shown that fathers go through a hormonal change when they become fathers also.
Absolutely. That sympathy weight, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the whole time, yeah.
Listen, that's the first time, and I'm writing down, we get elevated estrogen, what is it? Oxytocin. Yeah, and prolactin. All of those go up. Wait a minute, and this is the connection that we can't leave out, even though we understand in this society all families aren't together. Those levels elevate when he's around the child or the mother.
Yeah.
That's when that's a connection that we definitely learning that will make you a little bit more humane,
right,
to the person that you're co-parenting.
But with. just like women experience what's it called after postpartum. Yeah, women experience postpartum, our hormones going crazy and all that. The same thing is happening with the man, and all of these emotions, and now these are new emotions he's experiencing. Right. He doesn't know how to cope with them, and the hormones in his body's almost like he's revisiting puberty, and they don't know what to do with themselves at that time, and that energy has to go somewhere. Right. And so support systems, again, back to the support systems in place to support all of that would help greatly.
Yeah, that was just something new.
Are these some of the things that come up, Bobby, in the programs that you all have where you are?
What program?
Some of the things that young men may go through in terms of their emotional things that they go through in the process of becoming fathers and things like that.
I believe so. I had the privilege to sit in on one of the sessions at Center for Urban Families actually a couple of times, and definitely revisiting generational trauma, talking about your experience with your father, because that is the model. Even without presence, your father has an impact on you. Still, even his absence has an influence and affected you, and how you raise your children moving forward. So definitely taking some time to explore what did that relationship looks like, and how did it affect you? How did it change you? Because for a lot of men, a lot of brothers today who are present in the lives of their fathers, some did not have their fathers present, and they based their parenting on, well, I'm not going to be like my father.
That's me. Right.
I'm not going to do things he did.
Right.
And actually, they go even harder. Based on that idea. So I'm gonna show up to every birthday party, every recital.
They become who they needed at that age.
Right. Trying to fill a void. Trying to fill the void, and that's what you work in your whole life. I remember with my biological father, who wasn't present throughout my life. When I had that difficult conversation with him, I was about, I want to say 31 years old. And one of the things I told him is, I worked my entire life trying not to be like you.
Wow.
Made a conscious decision as a child that I'm not going to do what you did. And my behavior, my actions, my decisions were based around that idea. Well, I'm gonna be there because I don't want this little girl to be without a father. I don't want her to wonder where her dad is at graduation.
Right.
I don't want her to get off the bus from school and mom is never there. So I want to be there to do homework. I want to be there
Right.
to boys, to the emergency room visits, the whole nine. Made a conscious decision about this. So the lack thereof or the presence thereof, that's your whatever man in your life, that is your model, and that's what you model yourself after moving forward in terms of fatherhood and trying to achieve that. And that's even if you like I said, if you don't have a father present.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll say I was that same young man. Never had a chance to have that conversation with my father. He wouldn't want to have that conversation with me. But I picked up, and I'll say this to any young man that doesn't have a mentor or someone that he's looking up to. You still see certain lessons if you're watching. You still meet men that'll give you a lesson, and if you internalize it, you'll understand how it can help you be a better person. Just certain things of sitting back and watching. You might watch a neighbor, and you might watch how he interacts with his children, but you've never seen that on a regular basis, and that's part of the community teaching that's missing. The everyday. We need to see the part of the youth training. It's not necessarily specific lessons, but it's more so daddy come out the room, he help with breakfast, he take us to, then he go to work. And they've been doing that for 15 years. Mm-hmm. So that repetition is part of that man training, that stern disciplining when you know you can go to mama and maybe get it, and she hit you with what daddy said. Or did you ask your father first? And you know what I'm saying? It's just those things are the things that we are missing. So for young men, I'll say, coach, latch on to them. Someone you hear talking some common sense. It might be somebody that's fixing your brakes, and y'all get a chance to talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just sitting outside, and y'all talking about man stuff. Listen, take it in, listen. Might have to look up some of it. There's nothing we always research. If anybody gives you a book, I'll research who wrote the book. So you always do your research, and you can learn that way if you're looking for that knowledge in that manner. The easiest way, of course, is coming from youth and being taught slowly but surely. But when you get to a certain age and you want to know things, the universe will bring people around you that will assist with that knowledge, or you gaining that knowledge, or pointing you in the right direction to go get that knowledge. It'll definitely happen. But that's how I learned. I didn't have my stepfather. He was probably around for like 4 or 5 years, and that was all elementary school. So after that, it was my mother and my big brother, and he was ripping and running the streets. So I just took things in from different folks, and I internalized it for myself. And I ain't saying I'm no perfect dude, but I know I'm definitely far better father than my father was, far better. And that was, and like Bobby said, that was my goal. I know I've succeeded that 10 times over. I'm not finished, but I know I've succeeded that. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's internal. You have to internalize that. Like you said, Bobby, you purposely said, I'm not going to be this. And that's how you have to think about it. No matter the struggles, no matter frustration, you know your goal was to be a good father. So you deal with whatever you had to eat, bad. We all make bad decisions. I'm sure there's 5 parents on here. We've all had to apologize to our children. It's not about being perfect. It's about being a good person and being a good parent and wanting better. I mean, it's not. It's simple, but it's complicated.
Very complicated.
It's very complicated. Very complicated.
Very complex. But I think, giving men who are becoming fathers the benefit of doubt, society extending a great amount of patience and understanding that these are men who've been traumatized like I said, going back to generational trauma. And they had to deal with the generational trauma, as well as the trauma that may be in their own communities. That in working with fathers and engaging fathers, you have to factor that in. You have to factor in, well, what was your relationship with your father? Well, from what you observed growing up, what was your peers' relationships with their father, with their father's presence?
That matters.
And you have some men that say, well, my homeboy didn't have a father, and
Right.
didn't have a father, and these are the people I hung around.
Right.
No one had a father.
We had a whole neighborhood.
I had to think about it. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I can't think of maybe three.
And that's what I was going to say.
I had one that was being raised by their father. One set of friends, they were being raised by their father. The mother had passed, so he was raising his children. But maybe one of.
See, in my neighborhood was the complete opposite. Everybody in my neighborhood, even though I did get pregnant 16, I go with that one. But everyone in my neighborhood had a 2-parent family. And the one family that later on, when we were like 9 or 10, when her parents said they were getting a divorce, the whole block was like devastated because we didn't even know what that was. It was just like unheard of. I remember that night so well when she came over crying to me because her parents would get a divorce. So that wasn't known to us. So we grew up with the fathers and mothers within our neighborhood.
Right. And in my experience now, with my 14-year-old, everybody has a 2-parent house.
Now,
friends.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this, just because I know where you live now, Coco, and Dana, you were raised in Randallstown. Are the areas basically homeowner areas? Is that a factor?
Mine is.
Is that economic aspect a factor in families staying together? Goals?
It could be, but I'm not. It could be, but I think it's the paradigm shift. I think it's the different dynamics that's going on now.
Well, and you got to think about the times too. In the 70s, you didn't see a lot of Black women who were single Black women buying single family homes.
Right.
So the dynamic is going to be, if you're a single family home in that neighborhood, in an upper kind of a middle class neighborhood, you're going to have two parents basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But early on though, I remember one time when my daughter, she was in preschool and she had this little friend, and she asked me why her friend didn't have a father. I didn't have an answer for her, but then the mother turned up pregnant. She said, "Wait a minute."
Because that's hard to explain because of the order. Because of the order in her head. It's daddy first, then baby.
Yeah.
I had nothing. And to add to everything we were saying, we had to change the mindset of the females as well, because I can tell you I was guilty of it too. We just don't think about men not being able to be men. We think it's just built in you almost. We don't understand that the struggle you have to go to in order to become that man as well. Right. So we have to be sensitive to that.
It's the same for us. It's built in. You're supposed to be a mother because we're going to carry a child. We're going to birth the child.
But y'all growing far more than us.
Yeah.
In my opinion, women are, and then we have the it's a I guess a hood saying, but it's kind of true. Black mothers raise their daughters and they spoil their sons. When the average sister is 19, 20, 21, she either almost finished college or ready to buy her first house, or she's far, and we're young men having issues with not being able to go out every weekend, or we don't want to further our education. It's a mentality from when you're younger, in certain instances anyway, in my opinion, that that's a true dynamic in the Black community. If you just look at it, we start off slower as adults as far as men. Not all, some are, and again, it goes back to the 2-parent household. If my father was a Kappa, I know I'm going to college to be a Kappa.
Kappa, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's automatic. He been buying me shirts since I was, 6 months old. That I'm groomed for that. So he's going to move further with that. So,
Gina, I have a question. In your program where you have a father component, do you have a lot of participation?
So I don't have a program now. I actually have a program in development, and it's research. I actually defend my research proposal tomorrow. But in all of the research that I have studied, there has been difficulty in getting men involved. But there's a couple of factors behind that. A lot of times doctor's visits happen during the day. And so there are not a lot of services that are offered during off hours,
Right.
when a lot more fathers can make it. Then there's also a stigma of asking for help. Men in general use health services less than women. So to say, hey, I need help with this, or can you show me how to do this, is something that we have to normalize in not just our community, but everywhere. For men. So there's a few things on the front end that is being recommended to be done before there'll be this mass interest in participating in these type of programs. And then using language that men identify with more. For example, the questions that are asking women, are they depressed or are we depressed? Or around depression, we manifest depression in different ways. And so if you ask a man, like, are you feeling sad today? He might be like, no. And then they're, oh, okay, he's fine.
Be like, I'm good.
But men experience depression and anxiety in different ways. And a lot of times men kind of, when they're feeling things, they just redirect. So a mother might be like, how come he don't come home at night? And why is he always staying out late? He must don't care about us. But oftentimes, men take that anxiety and that depression and they find something else to do, get involved in a sport or hang out with their friends as a coping mechanism rather than being, having apathy about the situation.
I just had a thought too, what you said about the off hours and things like that. That's another thing that has to change in the workplace. You have maternity leave. Some jobs are coming around to having paternity leave as well. Very new. But there's another component that needs to happen on that end as well, because, hey, I'm a man, I'm getting ready to have a child, so I'm going to need time off as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think we were all parents, so we know how little babies sleep through nights. And so if not all mothers get the benefit of, a 6-week paid maternity leave either. However, for fathers, it's even less likely. And so if you're up all night with a baby that's crying, you still have to get up at 5 and go to work and expect it to produce and, bring home the turkey bacon or whatever you eat. Then there could be an issue with that. So yeah, you're definitely right. There needs to be a lot more systems to support.
The whole system has to shift. The paradigm has to happen on every level. Mm-hmm.
But I would advocate for fathers kind of, so there's the services, and we know that in Baltimore, most of the things that happen starts at the grassroots level. Most major things that create change here start by people who live in the neighborhood and just want to see things be better. Now. And so there are a lot of, like was mentioned earlier, some of the fatherhood programs that are going around, and then taking accountability. So once you make the decision, I want to be different, or I want to, learn how to deal with these things, then actively seeking out that information. So if you're at the doctor's visits, you're asking like, hey, what should I be doing? What can I expect to kind of take initiative if that is an interest point, to take more control of your situation and kind of almost demand the resources that you need to make a good transition.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's gonna. I'm just thinking it's a lot. You're talking about. This is a piece of a system that wasn't designed for us. I'll say racially or gender-wise. As far as this aspect of the system, it's definitely 100% pro-women, pro-women. And the whole system in general is anti-melanin. So just that understanding. But the understandings here I think all of us see a change in every aspect of life going on. So it's definitely energy in the air to be able to change, but I can't say that it's not a lot. How can I put it? In my opinion, it's definitely grassroots. Everything starts low because those are the people that can grab people where they are. That's just how it goes. That's any struggle. You got to grab them where they are. And it's also that individual wanting to know or wanting better. And it has to be that inside of that young man or the family structure within that house to say, yeah, he can get Jordans, but we're going to put him in this rite of passage program for the next 5 or 6 weeks just to give him a start over something else, just to give him something else. It has to be that wanting to know and wanting the youngins to know for the change to really be there. Yeah, we do. Men want to change in the system, but it's definitely the work that's going to make it. It ain't going to just pop up. And nobody just changing the laws and policies just because we hurt. That's not how
don't let the system
I would say to that point that I don't have an expectation for, Johns Hopkins or University of Maryland do a paradigm shift. Right. I don't have that expectation.
Right.
That I believe us creating our own spaces.
Yes.
In our own institutions. Derek, you and I were a part of 300 together. Right. Men knew how to take a Friday night to be involved in their community, to engage with one another, to discuss and support one another. Yeah. Men know how to do these things. There is a perception that men do not know how to articulate their feelings, and men don't know how to be vulnerable. And men do know how to do these things. They have the ability to do these things.
Right.
So men, brothers like us, taking the initiative to create spaces for this to happen, like rites of passage, it has been an effective institution in terms of Black communities on how do we indoctrinate and socialize Black boys in our community. It's been an effective means on how to do so and transition them into manhood. So it's about us establishing these institutions and creating these spaces to have these conversations. I mean, Dana made a good point about engaging men. Like, no, you're not going to get the response of, well, are you feeling sad? Like, no, you're not going to get a response out of me. I work with a lot of Black moms raising boys alone. And I've heard, well, he don't talk and he don't not express himself. How are you asking and how are you engaging?
Right. What is your
perception? I don't get that in our sessions. When I sit down with them, what's going on, brother? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. I'm able to get feedback. I'm able to get vulnerability and him expressing his thoughts and feelings. So it's a matter of how to. It's a misconception thinking that boys and men cannot express themselves and don't have the language to do so. It requires us, more men, creating those spaces and those opportunities to do that. And I believe that is a shift within itself that, today and age, you have men that it's not cool not to be involved in the lives of your children.
Right. That shift is, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
It's not, you brothers like Shelly promoting a different side, a different narrative.
And that's good.
Being involved with your children is where it's at. That's what's happening. Spending time with your daughter, playing basketball with your son and your daughter. This is where it's at. This is what parenting, particularly Black fatherhood, looks like in our community. But that started from us. That didn't start from outside institutions. Right. That started from Black fathers taking an initiative to say that we want something different in our family.
Something different.
Right.
To be something different. I'm with you.
Absolutely.
I'm with you. Okay. Thank you to guests. Definitely a good show, good information. Do either of you have anything else to say before we go? Do you have anything else? Anything that you would want to point to? A program you would want to point to? Something that we missed that you thought that we might go over? I just
Men and Family Centers, Men and Family Center, Leon Purnell, Center for Urban Families. Connect with Shelly Stalow. Also connect with Black Fathers Foundation.
Black Fathers is the group on Facebook.
Yep.
It's
Matt Pressberry.
Matt Pressberry. Yeah, he's the founder. I was gonna say it's coast to coast, but I want to say it's probably international. It's probably some folks outside the country.
Yeah.
Also in that group. It's a very popular group.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Dina, do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say that I looked up Benny Hill and wow. I had no idea.
No, you gotta listen. You were you able to hear him?
No, I was trying to halfway behave. I didn't turn on the video, but I was reading about him.
You're gonna hear this song. You're gonna hear this song again and again for the rest of your life.
I think I just did want to point out to these positive effects of fathers is not exclusive to biological fathers. So for all of you all that's out there that's, taking on these mentorship roles and stepping in for children that you don't have your blood, you are literally changing the lives, of these children. And so biological fathers, father figures, father-like, father-ish, everything, just shouts out to you, and please thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you very much. I got my two oldest, not mine, and if their fathers call them their children, we'll probably have a problem. I swear to goodness, we'll have a problem. They mine for sure. But I agree. That's something that we didn't touch on. And stepfathers, boyfriends, long-term, all y'all need it. And especially that their father's not there, or what their father is lacking in. That's an important position to play in a child's life. It really is. It just is. So, again, thank you. Good show. Be seeing y'all around.
Thank you.
Bobby,
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Bobby.
Bobby, I'm gonna send you a link to something. I don't think I ever showed it to you, but I'm gonna text you in a few.
Yep. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
I definitely appreciate you too, brother. Good night, ladies.
Good night. Good night.
Oh, everybody. Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.